Welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Matt Baer. I'm the founder of Q4Launch, and we are excited that you guys are along for the ride with us today as we dive into driving more revenue in the guest lifecycle. This is a topic I'm really excited about, something that has been a passion of mine for a couple years, something I've been studying a lot, spending a lot of time looking at, understanding, and something I believe is a huge opportunity for all of us in the hospitality space. So really excited to connect with you guys on this topic today. There'll be a lot more learning from us coming out around this. This is kind of just the tip of the iceberg we're going to dive into together today. And we've already got questions in the chat panel. So getting some feedback that the sound quality is bad. If a couple of people could let me know if that's true, that would be great. Otherwise, maybe it's just on that one person's end. If you could drop a message in the chat panel if you can hear me okay, I'd appreciate that. And we'll dive into our topic here. So a little bit about Q4Launch. We are a marketing agency that specializes in the hospitality space, working exclusively with hotels, resorts, bed and breakfasts, and vacation rental managers to help put heads in beds and keep your units, your hotels, your resorts, your B&Bs running at high occupancy rates and keep people coming in. So it's an exciting opportunity. We represent about 200 properties from Singapore to Maui and just about everywhere in between. So I have a tremendous amount of data on what's going on in the industry, what's going on in the marketplace, what's working for people, what's not, what's working for our customers, what's not. Just a lot of different opportunities within that. So much of what we're going to talk about today is driven from our experiences with our own customers. So whether you're a customer of ours, I know there are several signed up for today's webinar, we're glad you're here. Or if you're not, majority of our webinar attendees are not customers. We're glad you're here and have the opportunity to come and learn alongside us and hear about some of the things we're learning about and passionate about and thinking about. So our goal for you today is kind of expand how you think about the guest life cycle. It might be a term that you're very familiar with. You may have active life cycle campaigns running within your property, or maybe a brand new term for you. And we're going to kind of speak to everybody at their different stage of the journey as we move throughout our time together today. We will also have Q&A throughout. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask those questions in the chat panel as we move throughout our time together here today. I'll do my best to answer those in real time while we're still on the slide that the question is relevant to try to make that learning as relevant as possible. So that's a little bit about our time together today. I know there's a lot going on. It's a busy time of year for many of you. Many of you are running at high occupancy rates right now. Or full occupancy. We try to schedule these at a time where we think you'll be a little bit less busy, but we will be sending out a copy of today's recording, whether you're having some issues with the sound possibly, or if you're not having issues with the sound, but you weren't able to attend, we'll be sending out copies of the recording so you can reflect back on the content we share together today. So with that, let's dive in and start diving into our topic together today. So since this is something that we thought might be a newer concept for some of the people on today's call, we wanted to really make sure we defined what the guest life cycle was. So really wanted to start that out with a conversation about what a life cycle is in the first place. If you took business school, that's awesome. You probably studied this at some point in business school, whether it was in economics or somewhere else. If you didn't, and we know many hospitality hoteliers and hospitalitarians did not come through the traditional business school path, so we like to cover some of those things. So a life cycle, as defined by Merriam-Webster, one of their definitions, is a series of stages through which something, such as an individual, culture, or manufactured product, passes during its lifetime. I know many of you, your properties have had their own life cycles. You can look back and think about major renovations you've done, or maybe when it opened for the first time, or when it celebrated its 100th anniversary. You can think about life cycles that existed within your own business. Today, what we're going to dive into is our guest life cycle, and really understanding how the guest life cycle is different than just a life cycle in general. So to be able to do that, we really want to talk briefly about the 5 stages of travel. If you've attended our webinars in the past, you're probably tired of hearing me talk about the 5 stages of travel, but they are so foundational to making great marketing decisions. And knowing we have a lot of first-time attendees on today's webinar, we want to run over this today. And if you've been with us many times before, and you're like, Matt, that's old news, we've got a bonus 6th stage to talk to you about today, which we're excited about. So the 5 stages of travel that we're really going to be diving into in depth here as we talk about this guest life cycle are dreaming, planning, booking, experiencing, and remembering. And I would encourage you to jot those down. You can also find a blog on our website that dives into them. But they're so foundational, and we encourage you. We use this common language in our office all the time. Our office is headquartered in Charleston, South Carolina. We've got a staff of about 50 that come in our office every day and share time and space together, and we think that's really important. And as part of that, we think it's really important to have a common language you use. So we talk a lot about the 5 stages of travel and how they fit into marketing decisions and recommendations that we're making on behalf of our customers. What we see in the marketing space is that almost all call to actions on a website, almost all marketing is really wrapped around the booking stage. And I get it, if you have limited marketing resources, like we all do, doesn't matter how big of an organization you're with, you probably feel like you have limited marketing resources. The only person I've ever heard say they felt like they had unlimited marketing resources was actually somebody that worked at Disney. And if you work at Disney, you may actually have unlimited marketing resources. But for the rest of us who aren't just printing money like Disney and the U.S. Treasury, we feel that way. So as you feel that way, you tend to allocate resources into the booking stage more than anything else. And that makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, when we do that, we ignore people in other stages of the cycle. We ignore the dreamers and the planners. And in reality, the sales cycle, or the entire process someone goes through and they decide if they're going to book with your property or not, involves all 3 of these steps, the dreaming, planning, and booking step. And if you look at the time spent in each of these stages, the majority of time is spent in the dreaming and planning stage, with the largest chunk spent in the planning stage. The booking stage is actually a very short window of time. So we have to be marketing to people well throughout these dreaming and planning stages to be able to make sure they choose us when they enter into the booking stage. So we're going to break these stages down in more detail today in today's webinar than we probably ever have for you before, and give you some things to think about as it relates to the guest life cycle. The other thing, the other 2 stages here, experiencing. This is what you guys are great at. We tend to work with the top hospitality brands in the industry, and we love the experience that you provide. We have something we call Q4 Travels at Q4Launch, where we encourage our team and actually pay for them to go on vacation to the destinations that we have customers in, so they can go have that true experience that you provide, the hospitality that you all provide that is so unique. So we know you guys are crushing it in the stage, but we think there are communication opportunities there. And then the remembering stage, right? Of course, everybody thinks about this. The remembering stage is a really important part of this process. And what we have found is if we do marketing well in each of these stages uniquely, then instead of a linear path, like they tend to be thought of as it relates to one vacation or one trip, it becomes a cyclical path. And remembering is a short jump back into the dreaming stage and starting the whole thing over again when we're doing marketing well to each of these stages uniquely, understanding that the message has to be different. And much of what we're going to talk about today is going to heavily revolve around reaching these guests in different stages. How do we communicate with these guests in different stages, and ensuring that they have the best experience in each of these stages and then come back to us for repeat trips. I was at a conference a few months ago, and one of the speakers was talking about communication, and he was introing it and talking about how difficult it is. And he talked about where 2 or more are gathered together, there will be miscommunication. And I know many people talk about miscommunication with guests and how frustrating different pieces of that can be. And that's one of the things that we're trying to solve as we talk about communication through the guest life cycle, is really looking at that. And we believe that there's greater opportunity to communicate effectively through the guest life cycle, and that by communicating more effectively through the guest life cycle, through the 5 stages of travel they're passing through, that when you do that, you will enhance the guest experience. And by enhancing the guest experience, you will drive a guest that spends more money. And then you have to look inside your business and identify those opportunities, identify those places that you have a chance to get a guest to spend more money. So there's multifold going here, all wrapped around, of course, enhancing the guest experience. But by enhancing the guest experience, how do we better monetize that guest experience? So we're going to dive into that. As we dive into that, I'm not going to reveal what our bonus 6 stage is, but what we're going to talk about briefly for a minute is spending by travel category. Hopefully, there's a lot of information to get on the screen. Hopefully, it's big enough for you to really see it. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics released what's called the Consumer Expenditure Survey, and this is based off their 2017 data. And what it did was it asked people, how much money do you spend on vacation, and in what categories do you spend that money? So we're going to run over that data with you briefly here, and then we're going to kind of have some learning from that here as well. So what we found was, or what the Bureau of Labor Statistics found, was that 38% of the average travel budget was spent on transportation. To and from the destination, transportation within the destination. 26% was spent on lodging. 27% was spent on food and alcohol. and 9% was spent on entertainment. And that the average family cumulatively spends $4,700 each year. Now, in doing this, it surprised me, this statistic, or this group of statistics specifically, because I had heard other statistics that actually had lodging as a higher category. But they did make the note, and I thought it was important to note you, because our audience is lodging, that you might be disappointed about that statistic being lower than maybe you've heard in the past. And they noted that they thought their survey results were skewed lower by the fact that certain people reported $0 in this category due to staying with friends and family. So we kind of know as in the business that we're in that those aren't our customers. If you're staying with friends and family, we're in the lodging business, that's not our customer. So our customers' data is probably different than this, but it establishes a baseline that proves a point. And the point we really wanted to prove with this is that there is a lot of revenue that exists within a vacation, within an opportunity, whether that's a vacation or a business trip. I think the percentages would be different, but the point is the same, that there is a lot of opportunity to tap into that we're not tapping into right now. And we believe if you look at the guest life cycle, you will start to find opportunities to tap into other revenue opportunities that you're not tapping into right now. And where there's revenue, there's growth for your business. And one of the things that we think about is we're working so hard to bring new customers and repeat customers to our hotels, resorts, B&Bs, vacation rental managers. We're working so hard to attract and convert these new customers into lodging opportunities. But once we've attracted a customer, we've done the hard part. Selling a customer something else is much, much easier than selling a customer the first thing. A friend of mine used to run a very large gym, and he actually traveled and spoke to other gym owners and talked about how did you grow something so successful. And his point was, I wanted something somebody could buy to become a part of our culture right away. And then from there, it was easy to get them to upgrade to a full membership. So whether that's a trial membership or whatever, and we all know trials are easily used. One of my other mentors told me growing up, he said, Matt, always have something every customer can buy from you. Doesn't matter how big or small they are, have something every customer can buy from you. And in lodging, a lot of times I think we miss this, both those pieces of advice following similar things is we have one thing you can buy from us many times. Now I get some of you run, very sophisticated large resorts and you've got other things, but for some of us, we may have one thing. You might be a vacation manager and we have a house. You can rent that house and that's it. Now we might have 500 of them, but we have a house and that's the one product that we can rent. We need to think about that a little bit differently to open ourselves up into these other categories. And as we think through the guests and how they move through those life cycles, I think, and if you spend time reflecting on this with your staff, you will start to see some opportunities that exist within that to be able to boost your revenue. So think about these categories, think about opportunities to boost that. And then how do we communicate with the customer we've already won? The lodging customer we've already won. And I'll tell you actually that winning the lodging customer, I think, is harder than winning the customer in these other categories. So that there's more thought wrapped around that than we probably have time to get into today. But some really important takeaways from kind of the last few minutes here, just touching on this slide. But let's keep moving. We want to get into the 5 stages of travel. And as we do that, and we actually pick up our 6th bonus stage, and we've combined a couple for time's sake today. But as we do that, we're going to look at a couple things. One, we're going to look at how do we attract the customer in that stage? Like what really works? And then how do we communicate? What methods do we use to communicate with the customer in these different stages? So let's dive in and break down these 5 different stages. We're going to put dreaming and planning together for time's sake today. And we're going to talk about the dreamers and the planners and what are they up to. And what we know, and granted this information comes from a Google study, which is in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. But what we know about that is that people are searching for days. Now, the study is a Google study, so the data might be skewed a little bit in their favor. But in reality, what Google found in studying how people book travel is that the average travel booking experience had 850 digital touch points and 166 searches occur over the span of 3 months. So they did an actual study, actually watched and studied through a third-party agency to try to unbias the data, how people book travel. And that's a study that we have a copy of, and we've read a lot of that information to influence the decisions that we make. But the brief information is in that bottom right corner, and we can zoom in on that in a minute. But 850 digital travel touch points for the average person they watch or book travel through this period, or through this study over the course of 3 months. And 166 of those were searches, which is a really big deal because this is the time you need to get found and add value. That's our focus here. When we're trying to attract more customers in the dreaming and planning stage, we need to get found and add value to them. Not the time to convert them into a booker, but get found and add value. As Google says in their study, you need to be there and be useful. I, kind of put that in our own language to get found and add value, but be there and be useful. It's a direct quote from the Google study related to this, which comes from Think with Google. They also found that travelers say search is the most common way they discover the brand that they ultimately book with. That came from a different Google global travel survey. But travelers say search is the most common way they discover the brand they ultimately book with, different than how they discover destinations. I think a lot of people get those things confused sometimes. How we discover a destination, different than how we discover the brand that we ultimately book with. Something else to be thinking about in the dreaming and planning stage, and what can drive dreaming and planning, is social influence. I originally had a slide built out and talked about influencers, but for time's sake, cut that back. But we all, social influencers is very much a buzzing topic in the marketing space. It's very difficult to track the ROI of social influencers, and I think there are a lot of quote-unquote social influencers out there who are just trying to get free vacations, and we've seen those. We get emails every day from social influencers who are trying to get us to introduce them to our customer base and set those things up. And in reality, we don't. We very rarely do, unless they are, pretty significant reach, because it's very difficult to track that ROI. But we see social influence actually driving people more towards destinations than towards individual properties. So what we believe, as a result, it works better for a DMO or a CVB, a destination marketing organization, as opposed to an individual property. And then media and publicity. Media and publicity can be a great part of the dreaming and planning strategy as well. So let's talk about touches for a minute here. What touches work in the dreaming and planning stages? Back to that first point from Google, keyword-focused website content to help you get found is always going to help attract dreamers and planners. It's going to help get your brand found, and we've taught about that in past webinars, so we're not going to go into it deep today, but a tremendous opportunity to capture people there. Google and Bing ads is another tremendous opportunity to be able to capture people there. And then lead generation to capture guest emails. You have to have a point of contact information to be able to start communication through a life cycle, right? There are people coming to your website, probably literally right now. You're on this webinar. People are probably literally on your website right now, evaluating your property and deciding whether or not they are going to make a booking with you. So they have already started their potential guest life cycle with you because they're in that dreaming and planning stage. They don't make it official typically until they get in the booking stage, but by having a lead generation opportunity to capture guest emails that speaks to them in the dreaming and planning stage, you're able to start marketing to them earlier in this funnel, start your guest life cycle marketing earlier in this funnel than your competitors are. And as a result of that, you're able to increase the people that book with you as opposed to a competitor, because you've gotten found and then you found a way to add value. We call it lead generation, but really it's adding value. And to think about that, you really want to answer that question of, how do I add value to my customers? How do I add value to a prospective customer? And we think about that a lot. One of our core values is to share knowledge as a company. So we are trying to add value to you. Whether you're our customer or not, we want to add value to you through the learning that you do by attending our webinar series or reading our blog or subscribing to our email newsletter. Our goal is to add value to you to help you grow your business, whether you're our customer or not. And the same can be true for you with prospective guests planning a trip to your destination, because you have unique information about your destination, about how to have the best trip to your destination that other people don't have. And by adding value to them in that planning process, you will gain more business over a period of time. So let's take a quick look at this. I'll zoom in on it here, make it massive, huge on your screen. So Gina was the kind of the stereotypical is not the right word, pseudonym maybe, for the person that they kind of coined in their study. So Gina, and this is data we talked about before, but Gina had over 850 digital travel touch points. And touch points are defined by searches, website visits, video views, or clicks. So any action that Gina took over the course of this process. So 850 digital travel touch points. And you have to think about, as a marketer, how many of those touch points belong to you? How are you earning those touch points? How are you making an impact with each of those touch points? We believe as an agency that every touch point makes a positive or negative impact. That's something we train our team on when they're new with us. Every interaction, every touch point you have with a prospective customer, existing customer, friend in the marketplace, whatever, has a positive or negative impact. I don't personally believe there's any neutral impact. And unfortunately, I think that's getting even more polarized, just as we're a very polarized culture right now, at least in the United States. And it's driving more so to either direction. People are either wowed or they're unimpressed. There's very little neutral. And it's getting harder and harder to wow somebody. So it's getting more and more important to be focused into this. What was interesting was that 24% of those touch points occurred on a mobile device. I actually expected that to be a higher number as I was reading through the study. But 24% of those touch points occurred on a mobile device. You can find the study for yourself and dive deeper into how that breaks down. Certain types of touch points are more likely to be mobile and lots of other things. But then 166 searches are done planning one vacation. I'm planning one vacation and I'm doing 166 searches. And if you think about it, that number sounds big, but then you start thinking about your own behavior. And I just got back. I was on vacation for the week of 4th of July. And how many searches I did over the course of that vacation. It was a lot. It was a lot before, leading up to it. And then it was a lot even while I was on vacation in the destination, different restaurants, activities, things to do. There was a lot of searching going on. And there are specific brands, as I was in the market, that jumped out to me as being brands that were there with the information that I was looking for. So we're going to not dive deeper into that. We're going to move forward for sake of time. But the next thing that we're talking about is the booking stage, right? This is where the majority of you are probably spending your time, money. That's great. It's very important. But the booking stage, really influencing the buying decision. And what are the things that influence the buying decision? Reviews, amenities, price, OTAs, lots of different things influence the buying decision. That list could go on and on for days if we don't have much time. So really thinking about how are we doing in these areas? How are we doing in these categories when a consumer, when a traveler is comparing us to another destination? How are we doing within each of these things? And how do these things, if they're influencing the buying decision, need to connect into the guest life cycle that we're creating? So assuming, again, that we're still kind of pre-booking at this point, how are we influencing someone to make a buying decision to book with us? Hopefully we have their contact information and have the opportunity to start doing that. But if we don't, how are we influencing these things on our website? How are we communicating these things effectively? And then what touches work in the booking stage? We found that remarketing ads with specific offers can work really, really well. Not to be confused with generic remarketing. Generic remarketing just being like your logo and, come spend spring on the Cape, or come spend summer in Phoenix, Arizona, or you're boiling on the sun, or whatever. Like, you get what I'm saying? It can't just be a generic brand-oriented ad. Those don't work. We haven't seen those work. But remarketing ads with specific offers, come spend spring on the Cape and do it for $199 a night, or come spend spring on the Cape and get a free gift certificate to such and such restaurant. When it's tied to an offer, those things can work really, really well. And then book direct messaging can work really, really well in the booking stage as well. Like really communicating that value proposition of why book direct and what's in it for the customer to book direct versus what's in it for me to book direct as the hospitality provider, as the hotelier, as the innkeeper, as the vacation rental manager. It doesn't matter what's in it for you. The customer doesn't care what's in it for you. What's in it for the customer? What's in it for the traveler? That's the messaging we need to be communicating in the booking stage. So a couple big things there to look at, a couple opportunities from a communication perspective to really pay attention to that. This oftentimes is going to be actually what starts our guest lifecycle communication, because the majority of your guests you probably don't have contact information for before they make a booking. So we've talked about some opportunities up to this point to be able to do that. We've talked about some opportunities to be able to get their contact information and communicate to them to increase the likelihood they'll book with you. But in the majority of cases, we also understand that you don't have their contact information until the booking occurs. So as we think about that, we're going to look at some of the communication opportunities that exist after that. So let's touch base on this. And here comes in our sixth stage. It's not sixth in order, but the anticipation stage of travel. Research says psychologists have found that the pre-trip period, the anticipation stage or phase, is the happiest travelers will ever be about their upcoming vacation. And I'll tell you, this is true for me. I just planned this trip, planned it for a bunch of friends that all used to live in Charleston. Now they're scattered all over the U.S. We try to come together once a year. There's 12 adults. There's now 8 kids in this group. So you want to talk about chaos for the 4th of July. That was it, 20 of us in a house making that happen. Thankful for the vacation manager that helped make that a reality. But you can imagine the little bit of chaos there. So leading up to that trip, there wasn't chaos. Like leading up to that trip, I was thinking about time on the lake and time in the pool with my kids, and everything was going to be awesome. And then I went on the trip and I realized, okay, I have to cook and I have to clean this house every single day because there's kids dropping food on the floor. And it just went from like this nirvana of trip experience and what it's going to be to the fact that there's crying kids, there was rainy weather, there was this going on, there was that going on, there was, lots of things happening. And it was no longer the nirvana that I expected it to be. So the point being that in this anticipation phase, the time between booking and experiencing, as a consumer moves between these two stages, there was a very important stage called the anticipation stage or phase, depending on the research that you look at, that we believe has a tremendous opportunity to be monetized and help to drive greater revenue through the life cycle. And studies have proven that guests nurtured through and in this anticipation stage are stronger spenders in the experiencing stage. So based on how well we communicate to people between the time of booking and experiencing will determine how strong of a spender they are once they get into the experiencing stage. So some really interesting data around that. And I honestly believe that as an industry, we are failing epically at communicating to customers in this anticipation stage. We have a tremendous opportunity and we're doing very little with it. And if you go through and you look at your own communication about what happens from the time somebody books to the time they're experiencing, I would bet that you find something very similar in your own. Now, of all the places I've traveled, I do, I don't even know, probably 40 trips a year between work and personal travel. And of all the trips that I've taken, I will say that Vegas probably does this better than anybody else I've seen. And if you think about that, it makes a lot of sense because they are masters of this. They are masters of getting spending out of those other categories that we talked about. So much so that oftentimes they will give away hotel rooms just to get you into the hotel, knowing that they are masters at driving spending in the other categories. So if you've ever been to Vegas, think back on that experience. I was at a conference at the MGM Grand last year, and the MGM just did a tremendous job with this, and they influenced my spending behavior while I was there. I ended up taking the team we had there to some show. I don't remember. I think Cirque du Soleil, or however you pronounce it. But they impacted my spending behavior very differently than they would have had they not had a barrage of marketing. Now, there's probably, much like everything in Vegas, is a little over the top. I'm not saying adopt a Vegas-style marketing for your anticipation stage, but there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there. And we believe as a hospitality industry, as a hotel industry, that one of the greatest opportunity exists in this anticipation stage. So let's talk about that for a minute. What touches work in the anticipation stage? Obviously, and these are just kind of a few touches you probably need to be thinking about, but a confirmation. I'd say probably we've all got that, right? A booking is made, the confirmation happens, check the box, we've got it. But not just check the box, we've got it, but really think about what does that look like? And I'll tell you, I had my world opened up on this a little bit about a year ago, maybe a year and a half. I don't know if any of you follow the author Bob Goff. Bob Goff wrote a book called Love Does. Tremendous book. If you haven't read it, highly encourage you to go read it. It's a hilarious book. You will laugh out loud reading it, I promise you. But he is an inspirational leader, in my opinion, inspirational author, and somebody that my wife and I have followed quite a bit. So she had the opportunity to go spend some time with Bob and booked a small kind of retreat that he was hosting called Dream Big. And when she did that, she got the standard, typical email confirmation that you expect, right? Hey, we've received your booking. Here are the details. Here's what you need to know. Here's where you need to be when you need to be there. But in addition to that, she got an inflatable beach ball in the mail, and it was already inflated. It was a miniature beach ball, but it was in the mail. She got it. It had notes written on it from Bob's staff. It was like, we can't wait to meet you, all these things. Now, I get how many guests you have coming through your hotels, and I'm not suggesting that that's a scalable thing for you, And I'm not suggesting everybody starts sending people beach balls in the mail. Otherwise, the Postal Service will hate me. But technically, it's legal. Actually, years ago, I did a study, abroad's not the right word, but overseas, did a study in Hawaii, did a marine biology study. And when I was there, like, the thing to do was to mail coconuts to people back home. You could write an address on the coconut and send it through the Postal Service, and it would find its way there. And I just thought that was the coolest thing I think it was a high school. As a high school, I thought that was the coolest thing, to be able to mail a coconut. No box, nothing. Write the address on the coconut, put the postage on it, and it would go through the mail. That's true. And the same thing happened to my wife when she received this beach ball in the mail stuffed in our mailbox. You can imagine how excited she became about this that she was going to have. And it set an expectation and a standard for what that experience was going to be like. So while you heard me say confirmation email and you thought, check the box, I've got it, I'd encourage you to reimagine your confirmation email, because there's probably opportunity there to start setting expectation and enhancing the guest experience in a way you've never done before. That's probably the most exciting part of the whole thing. Like, take that, figure out a cool way to implement it, and you've made your money for what it cost you to register for today's webinar, which last time I checked was free. So if you have any complaints, you can send those to the circular file cabinet. But the other things we want to talk about, upgrades and offers, tremendous thing, right? We've already won the customer. How do we get more revenue out of this customer? Upgrades and offers are a tremendous way to be able to do that. Tours, activities, spa bookings, extra services, pre-arrival information, all touches to be focused on and thinking about in the anticipation stage. I have a question here in the chat panel from Amber. Have you seen evidence of net negative impact on spending or guest evaluation of the trip due to over-communication? Great question, Amber. And I don't have data on that. I would say, I would personally say that, and I've said it in past webinars related to email marketing, that over-communication is overplayed. When the MGM Grand is sending as many emails to me as they are related to my stay, that communicates to me that they have data. They're a lot smarter and are spending a lot more money on marketing than probably most other hospitality brands. And if it's working for them, it probably would work for many of the rest of us. I think we limit ourselves, our own limiting beliefs, reduce the amount of communication. The answer to it, though, and then what I tell people as it relates to email marketing, is send more until you start seeing a negative impact. And with email marketing, that's things like unsubscribe rates or whatever else. Send more until you see it as a negative being posted in reviews or whatever. So send more until the data tells you to not. And that's not something that's just inapplicable across the board advice, but I think we tend to overemphasize, well, it's too much communication. It's too much. When in reality, it might be too much if the person read every single one. But if you look at how people interact with that type of communication, they don't read every single one. They read the stuff that pops out to them or seems most relevant. And then they will go back and find something, even if they didn't read it in the past, they'll store that away in their subconscious. And then when they're needing the information that was in that email, they'll go back and find that email. We see that with email marketing that we send out quite a bit. That when you send it out, we will actually see bookings coming from that months and months later, because people remember the email. They'll go back and find the email to be able to get it. So let's touch on the experiencing stage for a minute. This is really, really important. I spent a lot of time talking about it in relation to the MGM example. But what type of touches work in the experiencing stage? On-site activities. Activities unique to the week. Now, that's something that's not super scalable, so probably something you'd have to be at a local property, or excuse me, a larger property with more resources to be able to pull that off effectively. Many large resorts do this by, with their room drops, their nightly turn down service has kind of a here's what's happening tomorrow. See this a lot of resorts, but I think there's some digital ways to be able to do that well. Special offers and extend your stay offers. I'll tell you one of the offers that I've seen in the last 2 years that I most wish I could have taken advantage of was an extend your stay offer. We were staying at the Grove Park Inn, which is an Omni resort in Asheville, North Carolina, and having an absolutely incredible experience. And I think about 24 hours after check-in, we got an extend your stay offer. That, hey, your room's going to be available the night you're scheduled to check out. We'd love for you to extend your stay, and had some promotional offer to be able to do that. Now, their system was advanced enough that it triggered that automatically. I would have loved to be able to take advantage of that. Unfortunately, at the time, we had a 1.5-year-old, and our babysitter couldn't stay an extra night. Our 1.5-year-old wasn't with us, which is part of what made that experience so special, was some time away. But that's a great opportunity, and many of you have, especially with so many checkouts happening on Sunday. Many of you have Sunday nights as one of the lowest nights of the week at your properties, and an extend your stay offer can work really, really well. And maybe you don't have the technology in your PMS to be able to just generate that automatically, but that may be something that you train your front desk staff to do. So you might not be able to solve it with technology, but train your front desk staff to say, when a guest checks in, being able to say, hey, it looks like the room is available the night you're checking out. And then you know as a group, what's the likelihood that night will get booked, right? Like, what's the likelihood that within 2 days that's going to get booked? You know that number. If you don't, you should know that number. But what's the likelihood it's going to be booked? And then you've got the guest in front of you. What about an extend the stay offer right there? Maybe your technology can't do it, but your staff can do it in that moment. And maybe the guest probably isn't going to be ready to make that decision, but just give them a little postcard or something and write the price on it or whatever, and then they come back to the front desk to take advantage of that extend your stay offer. So a lot of ways to solve these things if your technology is not in a place that it can solve it for you. Question or statement here from Lori. We send out very comprehensive confirmation emails. I've had some guests thank me and tell me how great they are. However, I find that the majority of guests do not read them at all. How do you get these guests to read these? Great question, Lori. I think one is understanding that some guests, personality style-wise, behavioral style-wise, want to know every bit of information there possibly is. Some guests don't. So you're always going to have that some guests just aren't going to read it. But I would say how you get people to read it is to switch from very comprehensive emails to thinking about what is most important and disseminating that information in small drips. People are more likely to, I believe, and I don't have data to back this up, but I believe that people are more likely to process and digest information if it comes in small bits and it's very easy to read. So think bullet points, think those types of things in smaller bits, as opposed to if they open an email and it's forever long, it's like, oh, I don't have time for that, and they move on. So as opposed to maybe you break that into 3 emails, you make sure it's fun and engaging and it's on brand for you, and then they can find that, and you can make the subject of those emails more relevant to what each of those emails is. So hopefully that's helpful. Question for Mary, what was the book and author you mentioned? Bob someone, yeah. Bob Goff, Goff, is the author, and the book is Love Does. And it's not a business book. It's more of a life story book, if you will. But the hilarious book, and will impact the way you think about things a lot. So I encourage you to do that. He has a new book out as well. I don't know the title of that, but encourage you to check that out. If you Google his name, I'm sure you will find that. So, but great author, great thinker, and great leader. He also has a podcast you can check out. It's something that's influenced a lot of the way I think and a lot of the way we try to live our lives. But different topic for a different day. Hopefully that was helpful. All right, let's keep moving here and jump into the remembering stage briefly here. So let's talk about what touches work in the remembering. I think this is probably one of the most ignored stages. We're on to the next guest, right? We got a whole house of check-ins. We got a whole full deal. We got to clean the rooms. We got to do everything. We don't do a great job of the remembering stage. Now, hopefully, you're sending email marketing, and that is touching people in the remembering stage. That's something, although as we survey people, only 5% of hoteliers, hospitalitarians, whatever category you fall into, only 5% are sending email marketing campaigns at least once a month. 5%, shockingly low, which tells me that most of you aren't. If you're on today's webinar, you're probably more likely to be because you're studying marketing in general. But what touches work in remembering? The thank you email. Probably many of you are sending a thank you email. But again, like the beach ball example, maybe that needs to be reimagined. A satisfaction survey. Probably many of you are doing that now, but what's the goal of it? Review requests. And if you've done marketing in the earlier stages, you've reimagined your guest life cycle in the earlier stages, how do you think that's going to impact the 5-star reviews you see in this stage of the game? People are used to receiving that communication. You've enhanced your guest life cycle communication. You've enhanced your guest experience as a result of that. What do you think is going to happen to your reviews coming? And we all know how important and the monetary impact that 5-star reviews make on our business. Introducing them to a loyalty program or getting them to engage or enroll in a loyalty program. Introducing them to a loyalty program probably should have happened in the anticipation stage, but if you didn't, it's not too late. If you did introduce them to it, getting them to make sure that they signed up and claimed their points, and creating some urgency around that with some timing can be very, very effective. Book direct for OTA bookers. So here's a whole branch, and this is just one opportunity, but a whole branch of a guest lifecycle, and understanding how you treat guests differently can be very effective. Now, it can get a little bit more advanced, but you could start breaking down your guests into different personas and saying, okay, this is my anniversary getaway persona. This person comes for their anniversary every year, or their birthday every year, or this group plans a girlfriend getaway with us every year, or this group plans a business trip with us every year for their executives. You can break those personas down and start doing life cycles to each of those personas. You can tag them with a persona and build a life cycle unique to that persona, or an extension of a life cycle. So maybe the first 5 steps are the same, and then the next 5 branch off into a persona. One of those personas could be an OTA book. So somebody who booked on Expedia, and next time you want them to book direct, and they branch off of their pre-booking, pre-arrival, anticipation may be all the same. It may not be, but they may go off onto a separate branch, because you don't want to message somebody who booked direct with information about booking direct next time. Like, I mean, you can, but you don't want to make a big deal about it, because it's like, well, I already booked direct. Why are you making a big deal about this? It just becomes weird. But if somebody booked on Expedia, you do want to make a big deal about it. And again, you want to do so in a way that says what's in it for the traveler, what's in it for the guest, not what's in it for you, the hotelier. Like, I see a lot of hoteliers make that mistake. They try to communicate why they think you should book direct, whereas in reality, you don't care why the hotelier thinks that. What's in it for the guest? How do we make it valuable for the guest? Our rebooking offer, no matter how they booked, our rebooking offer can be very effective. Encouraging them to do some social sharing. You know, there's some great apps like Flip2 that have popped up to be able to encourage people to do this, but you can do that through life cycles as well. Birthdays, anniversaries, promotions and offers, remarketing ads with special offers. You know, people that have stayed with you in the past through a lookalike audience, or an actual through your email, or from people that have come to your website. Remarketing ads to bring people back. Educate them about special offers, special events. These things can be very, very effective. Many of our most successful hotels we work with are very event driven in the shoulder and off season. And they have to do that because, one, their CVB or DMO may not be driving and creating these events. And two, they find that when we create events, we drive bookings. So they create all these events. It's a lot of work, but you got to have a certain size to pull that off. But I'm not talking, some of these are not large properties. I mean, we have some 20-ish room properties that do this really, really well. And they just create a repeatable event that they know is going to work and doesn't put a lot of work on their staff, because that drives bookings. And you can look around the industry and find some great examples of this. We've got some customers who have been running some really cool ones that I've actually been super bummed I haven't been able to go to. But food travel is blowing up right now. And as it relates to foodie and like farm to table food, as well as wine and beer and distillery tours, that segment of travel is exploding right now. And some tremendous opportunities to create events and experiences around those things to drive bookings for you. I'll tell you, we go to Asheville a lot. Asheville is viewed as one of the kind of beer capitals of the East Coast. And I love craft beer. So every time we go, that's part of the experience. We try to experience a new brewery up there. And many of those properties in Asheville are doing a great job of marketing those experiences for their guests. So some tremendous opportunity to think about, how do we touch our guests? How do we create touch points? How do we create moments to touch them in the remembering stage? With the goal here being to drive a couple things. Drive loyalty with these guests, drive reviews that help us reach new guests, and bring these people back, right? That's what we want to accomplish. Bring these people back and get them to book with us again and again. So that's kind of the core of what we wanted to talk about today, but I'd really encourage you to take some time and process this. Map out what your guest life cycle looks like. Really draw that out and think about, how am I attracting people in these different stages of this life cycle? We shared some tips and ideas on how to do that effectively. And how am I communicating with people in these different stages of their life cycle? And that communication piece, I think, will open a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities for you. And as you're thinking about that communication piece, you've got to think marketing automation. Because like the beach ball example I shared with you, while it's cool, I also told you it's probably not scalable for the size property that you have. So marketing automation is the only way to execute on this. We have, I mentioned our lead generation process earlier. We generate over 1,000 leads a day for our customers. over 1,000 leads a day for our customers generated through our lead generation system we do for roughly 200 customers. So you think about that per customer, the number of products is a lot larger than that. I didn't want to say one too high, but over 1,000 leads a day for our customers through our lead generation process. And that generates over 1,000 emails every single day going out on our marketing automation platform. Now think about that. If I was sending those emails and our staff was sending those emails manually, or our customers were, there's no way we could get 1,000 emails out. But we've built marketing automation sequences to be able to get those messages out. And that's one small life cycle. We're talking about a much larger life cycle that spans the entire travel cycle. So as we think about that, you've got to build automation in this to make it work for you. The beauty of marketing automation is once you build it, it will continue to run. You've got to pay attention to it. You got to tweak it. You got to make it better. You got to work it, but it will continue to run. So otherwise, trying to execute on what we've taught you here will be absolutely overwhelming. To succeed, we've got to build repeatable processes and systems. And marketing automation is going to be our ticket to being able to do that. As part of that ticket, what we're trying to accomplish is the right person with the right message at the right time, as opposed to our market tunist thing here, where it's the right person, right message, wrong time to get him to save 40% on his car insurance. Looks like we still have some work to do. We all have some work to do on our messaging. We all have work to do on our communication. Where two or more are gathered together, there will be miscommunication. I started us off with that quote today, and I don't even remember who I stole that from, who probably stole it from somewhere else, so I didn't source it for you. But where two or more gathered together, there will be miscommunication, and we believe that an opportunity exists to communicate better, more effectively, to enhance our guest experience, and to increase the revenue that we're driving through the work we do to acquire a guest relationship. So we've talked a lot. We've thrown a lot of ideas at you today. I hope that was really helpful for you guys. We're going to answer some questions. If there are any we haven't answered yet, going to get some questions answered. We would love to talk to you about this as well. If this is an idea you're super excited about, pumped up about, we'd love to connect with you on it. Like I said, there's going to be more information coming out from us in the coming weeks on this topic, so stay tuned for that. But if this is something you're excited about, we'd love to connect with you. My contact information is there on the screen. You can also follow us at facebook.com/Q4Launch. Check that out. Connect with us. You can see some of what we're working on, see blogs we post, those types of things. Great place to find that. We also always post webinars that we're going to do. And if today's webinar was helpful for you, we would love if you leave us a 5-star review. So we will send out a link that with one click, you can go to our Google page and leave us a review. Make that super easy on y'all. We'll send that out in the confirmation. So that can be really easy, but we would greatly appreciate if y'all would leave us a 5-star review, whether you're joining us live or you're listening to the recording. Leaving us a 5-star review would be greatly appreciated as we help add value to you. We'd love if you could help add a little value for us by leaving us that 5-star review. That would be awesome. If today's webinar was not helpful, you can email me and tell me about why it wasn't helpful, and I'd appreciate your feedback. Or if you have topics you'd love to hear from us on. We get those emails a lot, and we always appreciate it. Hey, we'd love to see a webinar on such and such topic. That really helps us as we shape our conversations, and we're shaping our third quarter webinar series right now, trying to put the final touches on that to be able to line those up for the third quarter. So exciting stuff coming up in the third quarter at Q4 Launch. I don't see any new questions in the chat panel. Looks like I have gotten through all the questions in the chat panel, which is great. Try to stay up with those throughout our time together today. Appreciate you all joining us in the midst of your peak season, and as busy as you are, appreciate how many of you showed up for today's webinar. We have a couple hundred people registered for today's webinar, which is great. Really exciting, great information. We will be getting that recording out to you as well, so keep an eye on your inbox for that. And if there's anything we can do to help you grow your business, help you improve your website, help you improve your marketing, help you improve your guest communication, we would love to connect with you on that as well. So please get in touch with me at the contact information there on the screen, and we'd be happy to connect with you. Thanks, everybody. We look forward to seeing you next time.